Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode with MarkTech. I apologize for quite a long delay in between videos, but today I'm back and bring quite an interesting topic. I think most of you might have heard about it, but I really wanted to deep dive into it. Well, what exactly are we talking about? Well, at first I would like to ask you to subscribe, like, share, and do all the YouTube jazz as I call it. But without further ado, well, we are talking about Beeper today, or to be more precise, Beeper Mini. What exactly is Beeper Mini? What is the controversy around it? And what is the most likely future for Beeper Mini, at least according to me? Well, we will discuss all of that right now. Well, Beeper Mini, as for a sort of informative starting point, is an Android app. This is why you can get it on Google Play, that, yes, ladies and gentlemen, allows you to get blue bubbles on Android. And obviously, what are blue bubbles? Yes, you can actually access iMessage, the actual iMessage servers and the associated service, by using this app while still being on Android. And this was extremely interesting. It launched on December 5th, so very, very recently, and obviously had quite a lot of hype about it, especially in the US, where a lot of people complain that obviously iMessage interoperability with SMS is quite a nightmare, admittedly. Well, how exactly does Beeper Mini work? I think we should start with that, because as you might remember, I not too long ago covered Nothing Chats, and Nothing Chats used a middleman called Sunbird, which basically utilized a farm of Mac Minis to essentially access an iMessage client on that Mac. But for this, you would have to provide it your data, you would have to have access to it. So it was basically a security and privacy nightmare. The good thing about Beeper Mini is that it seemed to have come without any of those risks. And before I say anything wrong, I want to really defer to what the actual developers of this service have said. Well, for one, let's start with its feature set, right? You basically use your regular phone number, in this case an Android phone number, but obviously you're just your regular phone number, and it turns blue. Similar to how if you register your phone number with iMessage from an iPhone, it turns blue for anybody who types in your phone number and decides to send you a text. The same obviously goes for emails on iMessage. I don't know if that works this way on Beeper Mini. For now, it seems like their focus has been on phone numbers. It has a nice design, supposedly it's really fast. It features full end-to-end encryption, right? End-to-end, which definitely was not the case with Nothing Chats, because with Nothing Chats, you had to give them your data, which was then handled horribly, and only from that point on did it communicate with iMessage servers in an end-to-end encrypted way with a Mac, but then it also had to send the data back to you. It was an absolute nightmare. This is basically end-to-end encrypted from the point that you send a message right from the app. So the builders of the app have no way of knowing what you are writing, and similar to how it's always the case for iMessage in general, Apple cannot read your messages either. It's a standalone Android app. You don't need servers, laptops, Macs, or iPhones. You can actually see they are one of the companies that have adopted this kind of like Apple marketing slide. It's quite common these days, but it works, I guess. What's interesting about this is that it actually connects you to iMessage. Not only is there no middleman, but it essentially works as if you really had just a regular iMessage app on your phone. And the way they have done it, and this is what also enables features like end-to-end encryption, is because they have actually reversed engineered the access protocols to Apple servers and also the end-to-end encryption, so that the data that is obviously sent back and forth does not become completely worthless because the other phone does not know how to decrypt it, right? So yeah, it's actually quite an impressive technological effort. It allows you to send full-size media, videos, and audio. So basically iMessage functionality. You get all the threaded replies functionality, and of course your bubbles are blue, which is very, very important to a lot of people. So you can read up on that on their blog post, on the Beeper website. You can have your own opinion about it. I personally don't really care for services that are in any kind of way a middleman. Like if Apple introduced a messages client directly on Android, that would be a different thing. I'm not saying those guys are not to be trusted. Those are the same guys that built Pebble, for example. But it's always something that you should be careful about. However, I did want to start this video that way because with Nothing Chats, everything about it was bad. The actual technological foundation for Beeper Mini is quite good, so I can actually recommend you read up on it. They're quite detailed about it. They actually share information on GitHub, so security researchers can actually go in and analyze their claims. That is 1,000 times more open than Nothing Chats was. So quite a lot of kudos to those guys. Well, but what is the controversy right now? If everything just works perfectly and it launched just 4 days ago on December 5th, well, it's basically already over, at least for now. Apple puts a stop to Beeper's Mini's iMessage for Android feature, and this has actually been an interesting development, because when people ask the developers of Beeper Mini, they said that their reverse engineering is basically so correct that basically the servers just see your Android phone now as an iPhone, that to them, there is very little possibility that Apple could actually block access to that feature without significantly hurting the ecosystem experience for actual iPhone, iPad, Mac users, and so on. The reason for that especially seemed to be that if Apple cut off Beeper Mini, there was a risk that Apple might have to also cut off users who use older iOS devices that don't have the latest version of iOS and the Messages app. However, it seems to be that Apple yesterday managed to somehow cut off Beeper Mini's access to iMessage servers and the service associated with it without hurting people on older iPhones or people on any part of Apple's ecosystem in general. Now that is very, very interesting, and it shows that Apple has quite fantastic engineers working there. People who are trying to use Beeper got the message called "failed to look up on server, lookup request timed out." So basically an error message that they couldn't connect to the server. Now, obviously, there's quite a lot of fuss about it. A lot of websites are covering the functionality of Beeper, the security and privacy aspect of it, and they're also all shitting on Sunbird and Nothing Chats. So I really wanted to give my 2 cents about it because it's actually really interested in that way. So Apple managed, after just 2.5, 3 days maybe, to cut this feature off. What is the reaction from the Beeper Mini guys now? Well, that reaction is actually quite confident and interesting, but we don't know if it's actually believable in the long term. For one, Beeper Mini right now has deregistered Android phone numbers from iMessage. Now, there are a couple of parts to that story. This has nothing to do with them fully on deleting all your everything associated with you because they're afraid or anything. But when you register a phone number with iMessage and then an iPhone user tries sending you a text, that text automatically becomes an iMessage. And usually iPhones check around like every 24, 48, 72 hours if the other number still is an iMessage number, right? So there's a good chance that people who register their phone number to be iMessage and had iPhone users trying to send them basically a text after Apple shut the service off, there is a chance that the message might not have reached them because they tried sending it as an iMessage, but obviously iMessage didn't work on their phone anymore. Now, automatically, iPhones do offer you the functionality to also send something manually as an SMS. And as I said before, after a day or two, they will usually automatically recognize that the phone number is no longer an iMessage phone number. So that should not be a big problem. Well, unless of course you consider at least a little bit that Beeper Mini is a paid service. For now, obviously it started on December 5th. That means that everybody who was using it was still on their first free week, which they offer obviously. Afterwards, it turns into a $2 a month service, which by all accounts is not too much, but it's definitely not free like iMessage is on iOS, and it definitely is not as worry-free as iMessage is on iOS. So how are the developers reacting to it? Are they basically closing down shop, saying, yeah, Apple got us, it's over? No. They're promising a fix, and it's quite unclear what that fix is going to be, but it seems like some of their reverse engineering efforts might actually allow them to reinstate their service again. How long that will last from that point on is a little bit tricky. So you can, once again, if you want to, you can actually read up the details. I think I've done a decent job at explaining to you, for example, why iMessage to SMS conversion can be a little bit of a problem at first. This is why phone numbers are deregistered. But there's also, of course, if you are, for example, somebody who was really excited about this service, well, should you really be still excited for it? Well, what are the guys saying? Fix coming soon. Our fix for Beeper Mini is still in the works. It's very close, so that gives me some optimism, I guess. I'm not that much rooting for the servers, so it's not like I'm like, oh my god, Beeper Mini will be fixed. But I guess for people who really wanted / needed it in some ways, I guess it's better than nothing. It's very close. It just needs a matter of bit of more time and effort, and they explained the registering of phone numbers. This to me becomes a little weird though, and this is where I have to come in a little bit as an Apple sheep, because this is a paid service, so it's not much money, right? But it's $2 a month, right? They're basically hijacking Apple's servers, right? It's not like that much work is being done on their part. Even if it was, that wouldn't give them the right to access Apple's servers. And then the other thing is that reverse engineering, for example, is very obviously different from just copy-pasting existing code illegally. It's very different from hacking into a servers. However, reverse engineering is not a perfect, like, silver bullet solution either. As you can see, there definitely was something about this reverse engineering that still allowed Apple to recognize those devices that communicate with their iMessage servers to basically identify them as not being iPhones. And there's also, of course, a problem if Apple can actually like close this down so quickly. Is it actually worth paying for it in any reasonable capacity, right? Like the $2, of course, everybody got an extra free week now. That's good. But would you really pay for it? Especially, and that is my last argument, if RCS, which are Rich Communication Services, which is basically a Google-backed standard to replace SMS for the most part, is coming to iPhone next year. Like, I understand there's this grand unifying wish of combining all messengers into one application. In fact, Beeper has actually promised that over time they would also integrate with services like WhatsApp, right? Which obviously should work much better potentially, because obviously Facebook does not insist on platform exclusivity for WhatsApp. However, RCS is, in my opinion, the solution if you actually want like a nice fallback solution for when iMessage has to communicate with an Android device. Now, I've said time and time again, I personally do not care if RCS ever gets implemented because I live outside the United States, and it might come as a shock to my US viewers, which are less than 1% of my viewership, but most people, even those who use iMessage and prefer iMessage like I do, still use other services. For example, and I've said that time and time again, use on a daily basis also WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, and to a lesser degree stuff like Skype from time to time. Right? And of course, WhatsApp is the king of the world for the most part in that regard. People like use it as even like as a serious email alternative in places like the Middle East. WhatsApp absolutely is like an essential part of life there. And I understand that some people feel similarly about iMessage and they want to integrate like all their friends and family members into like their iMessage group chats, into all their like work groups, and into just getting all the functionality like full quality photos and videos, read receipts and stuff like that. And Apple is doing exactly that. Now, it might be a little belated, right? But I would also argue that RCS has become feature complete only earlier this year. So why should Apple have rushed it, right? Well, RCS will bring basically all of that functionality, but as you can see, the bubbles will stay green. And my question to you is, do you really want to pay $2 a month to a service that might be shut off at any given point just to change those bubbles from green to blue? And now Apple says it's later next year. They did not qualify when exactly it will launch in 2024. So maybe you would want to use Beeper Mini as like an interim solution for like the next 6 to 8 months or something like that. Maybe you really need all the full iMessage functionality, which might not fully be replicated by RCS. At that point, I do have to, however, add though, like I know it hurts to sometimes not have all the available software and services on one piece of hardware, especially if you know that there's no like good hardware reason for something not to run on it. For example, am a console gamer. I'm constantly subject to getting exclusives, but also getting excluded from exclusives for other platforms. And yet, this is what businesses are based off. Our iMessage is not some kind of evil service that came out to hijack like an already greatly functioning ecosystem. It came out in 2011. It basically like was the perfect solution at that time when it comes to functionality. It was so far ahead of anything else at that point. And the fact that it was integrated into one messenger that had SMS at its fallback, which didn't just obviously work for if you communicated with somebody of Android, but at that time a lot of people still had feature phones, not even smartphones, so they wouldn't even have been able to use any kind of other smart messenger service, right? This is why iMessage was so incredible. And now people want to badmouth it and they want to completely replace it, right? Google is pitching RCS as a complete replacement for iMessage. That won't happen. It simply cannot have all the same functionality as iMessage. For example, stuff like Apple Pay integration. We had Nothing Chats that wanted to inject a weird middleman between your Android device and a Mac that communicates with iMessage servers. And now Beeper created definitely the most elegant solution if you truly just want iMessage. But then you also have to understand that Beeper is not actually friendly to people on Android, right? Because if you are actually doing all your communicating with like people with iMessage, well, now the people who use Android devices and still want to access those niceties, one might say, well, they now have to start paying up as well. And I know it's not a good argument for most people, because most people believe that, oh, big companies are already so rich, why don't we trick them a little bit out of their money? Well, now the question starts, well, not only is this not a comprehensive solution in the same way RCS is, because obviously RCS is already integrated into the Google Messenger app and integrating into Apple's Messenger app, which will basically put it on every somewhat recent smartphone on the planet for free. That will not be the case for Beeper, and then you will have to pay for it to not even get the same great result. And then the question is, you're paying guys money to reverse engineer Apple's actual like engineering efforts. Reverse engineering is difficult, don't get me wrong, but you're paying people money for creating something that they actually had no hand in creating. And that to me becomes a moral quandary. Now we can talk until we are green and blue, in this case blue, I guess, about Apple's terms of service, right? But Apple's terms of service deliberately state that basically creating an iMessage account and stuff like that, obviously you have to agree to certain conditions, which in this case you don't, as far as I know. But regardless of even that, then Apple's terms of services are obviously pretty clear that you are accessing Apple's servers and services only in ways that are allowed by Apple, and obviously this isn't. Now, we can talk about if those terms of services are fair. Maybe like big governments like the European Union Parliament might change that and will enforce like chat messenger interoperability. However, this is not where we are right now legally. This is not where I am, or most likely will ever be morally. And just as a consumer, paying for something that will soon be completely free and work better just seems weird to me. Like, I know those guys have worked on this for quite a while, but I just cannot get over myself to support something like that. For anybody watching this, please let me know, because I wasn't able to research that. Was Beeper Mini actually available outside the United States? Because I've tried looking that up. I've used all the languages that I know to look that up. The problem is that nobody outside the US cares. So I wasn't even able to find significant information on this from German websites, who are just like basically translating what you get from English-speaking websites. So if you know if this is available worldwide, please let me know, because this is the one thing where my knowledge falls a little short here. So this has been a little longer than I expected, but I guess I also got a little more emotional than I expected, because I just want people to calm down a little about all those blue-green bubble conversations. And I know it's much bigger of a conversation in the United States. It's, as I have seen by researching it in like German and Russian, and by even asking somebody to look it up in Arabic, it's not an issue in most of the world whatsoever. And this is why I really want to encourage you. Use other services in the meantime, and then once available, use RCS. Or if you actually, because most likely WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram and stuff like that, or Facebook Messenger will be still significantly more feature rich than RCS. Well, once you start using those, well, you can keep using those. Guess what? So this was a lengthy way of me basically saying, wait for RCS, and I'm not even that great of a supporter for RCS, but this is my take on Beeper Mini. A technologically impressive service that I wouldn't be too worried about using when it comes to security and privacy. However, I would definitely worry about the stability of the service, as Apple is able to shut it off after just 3 days. With it, I would also worry what happens once the service actually stops working, whether it's temporarily or permanently, right? How long until your Android phone number is just seen as a regular phone number by iMessage users, so they stop sending you iMessages that you can't receive? How long do you have to wait for fixes and stuff like that? And would you really pay for all this if, and I repeat myself, if RCS will be free? And those are my last words on this, ladies and gentlemen, unless and until we get an actual comprehensive fix and or some words from Apple about how they see a service like this. With nothing chats, I don't think we really needed anything from Apple, because for one, they announced RCS coming in 2024, about 2 days after the nothing chats announcement, and then security researchers destroyed all the Sunbird middleman solutions. So I don't actually think the service will ever come out, but with Beeper Mini, it's more nuanced because it's a much better service. So please let me know what you think. Please give me information on if that service is actually available worldwide. Please let me know if you would be willing to even pay for a service that comes with all the uncertainty that we are seeing just 3-4 days after launch. And please like, subscribe, share, comment, join the MarkTech gang here. We have been growing tremendously until I took a somewhat long hiatus. Let us get at least very quickly to 69,000 so that I can send you a really big, nice, and then we'll see where it goes from there. I hope to cover multiple Apple topics in the next couple of days and weeks, including the rumors of new iPads coming in spring 2024, much earlier than the summer period that I had originally predicted. Also rumors about new Magic Keyboard and Apple Pencil accessories. So I know a lot of my community actually cares about iPad, actually cares about the state of Apple's overall ecosystem and the devices running it. And I'm really, really glad to be back. I hope our community keeps growing, and I hope we can all actually create nuanced opinions on even somewhat interesting subjects like this together, right? I know I might be more negative on Beeper Mini than most people are, but I hope I've given you enough reasons, and if you have good counterpoints, I'm more than willing to listen to them. This was MarkTech. Thank you guys so much again. I'm tuning out. See you next time.